Inshallah, as we reflect on what's happening, we have to realize there is two sides, and we have to realize how others are thinking too. And as we mentioned last week, we see the demonstrators asking for democracy, subhanallah, democracy. I didn't hear many asking for Islam, they're asking for democracy. And as we mentioned last week, democracy is not given to people, it's taught. You have to teach people democracy. And as I mentioned before, they tell us a story of a blind man that all of a sudden could see, 20 years blind and could see. What is the first thing he could recognize? And the answer is nothing. Because he has, all his life, he has to touch things or hear things to recognize. He doesn't see, so the eyes could not recognize anything. So he needs to learn to recognize things with the eyes, to learn what things are. Same as democracy. You have to learn it. You can't just recognize it because you're free. What does free mean? Why didn't Islam come overnight and say, free all the slaves? Could you imagine you go to a slave who's lived all his life, a certain life, and say, go to free, go tomorrow, go and find your own living? He will come back right away and say, please master, do not let me go. I don't know what to do. I haven't done anything else. I don't know anything else other than living here and serving you. He has to be taught. To free a slave, you have to give him a trade and you have to teach him how to live, and then you let him go. So it's not overnight, you say. And that's what we see in some of the elections back home. You find people taking money to vote for somebody. And you find people knowing that the person he's voting for is corrupt, and he says, I know this person, he's my neighbor, so he votes for him because he's corrupt, or because he paid him money, because he doesn't understand what it means to vote. So you have to teach people first what it means before you just say, tomorrow, go, you're free. SubhanAllah. And the issue here, when most of us Muslims ask for democracy, we live here in a democratic country. And yet I know a lot of my friends do not go to vote. They don't think it matters or it doesn't make a difference. And you hear some of the Muslims say, is it halal or haram to vote? And they go down that path of discussion. So here we have it and we have the option, and yet we don't practice it. And yet back home we say, well, that's what we want. We don't even really know what we want. As we said last week, we know what we don't want. We don't want the current regime. But we have disagreed on what we want. And the best thing to want really is Islam. Because this is Al-Izzah and this is glory for us is Islam. But you don't hear a lot of people say, we want Islam. And then a lot of people say there is no contradiction between Islam and democracy. And there is. Islam, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, before he died, he compiled a list of Al-Munafiqeen. And he gave one of the sahaba called Al-Huzaifa Ibn Al Yamama the list and said, none of these should be allowed to rule the Muslims. He gave him the list of Al-Munafiqeen and told him none of them is allowed to rule. So Omar Ibn Al Khattab used to go to Huzaifa and says, Billahi alayk, is my name on the list? Omar Ibn Al Khattab asking, is his name on the list? Because he doubts himself, he's an honest person. Not like all of us, we lie and we cheat and then we say, no, I'm not a munafiq. Even though ayatul munafiq, to describe al-munafiq, 3 characters. If he talks, he lies. If he's trusted, he betrays. And if he promises, he does not fulfill his promise. Each one of us look at himself and say how many of these traits are in us. We call them white lies and. So Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said none of these munafiqeen could be a leader. But then nowadays, anybody could nominate himself and could win, whether he's a munafiq, he's bad or whatever. He puts a nice picture and talks well, and he could win. But Islam does not allow this. Islam does not allow the bad people to nominate and to win. So there is a difference between democracy, whether whoever he is, if he presents a good story, he could win, and Islam, which says only the good people are allowed to nominate and run. And if we look at the Sunnah, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not nominate anybody, and the Muslims chose Abu Bakr. But Abu Bakr, because it was tough times, he nominated Omar after asking the Sahaba, and they all agreed Omar is the right person. And Omar, rather than nominate somebody, he made a committee of 10 people to choose among themselves who should be nominated. So different ways of nomination of the right person to avoid that a munafiq or somebody we don't know or we don't understand understand just because he speaks well, he could nominate and he could lead the nation. And we have to be careful of this.